Right, thanks for fucking up the intro again. Anyways.
I'm sorry.
And we're live. If you hadn't guessed. Right, now, very big parish notice. Both the rounds as you've known it, like the Monday, Wednesday and Friday show, is no more. However, we will be doing one-off videos on a regular basis where we respond to anti-LGBTQ bollocks on YouTube. The reason for this is that a lot of my trans friends have told me that they prefer reading stuff, and you know, primarily I was always a writer. Yeah, I know I can't read very well out loud, but people like what I wrote. You know, dyslexia affects me in a weird way. It like this, I can read in my mind perfectly fine, but I can't read out read out loud very well. This might be because it's having to do two things at once. I don't know. But writing, as long as I've got a spell check, I'm okay. People understand what I write and they like what I write, so that's what I'm primarily returning to. I haven't stuck a link to my new blog in the description yet because, well, there's nothing there. I was due to start writing today, but I've had a rather shitty day. Epileptic seizures and an injury to my foot, which compounds the injury to my leg already.
Yeah.
So I can barely walk today. Though I have had my second jab at the weekend. Anyways, my second COVID jab, that is. Anyways, so as I said, we're going to do me and Ozma. Ozma's here.
Yeah, I am here.
Yeah. Helping to fuck up the intro again.
Yeah, well, you do the intros at time, and sometimes you say stuff right before the intro, and I like want to answer it, and then like jump into the intro, and I'm just like, fuck.
Anyways, as I said, me and Ozma are going to do. This is about the third fucking time. I'm so fucking repetitive. Response to various videos, and today we're going to be responding to a few Rose of Dawn videos.
A Rose of Moron?
Yeah. I do like referring to her as Rose of Moron.
I was surprised you didn't. That's why I had to bring it up.
I think I came out with that one first before you did. But anyways,
I definitely didn't come up with it.
Well, anyways, I mean, she's complaining that she put out a video last year complaining that the LGBTQ press is too pro LGBTQ. And obviously, there's a whole load of stuff, not just with her, but Volsh and various other people have been talking about leather daddies and drag queens at Pride, and should kink be allowed at Pride. I think people need to remember their LGBTQ history, which we'll get to. Anyways, also possibly next week we will be doing responses to Blair White put out a video saying she doesn't have anything against non-binary people, and then proceeds to hate on non-binary people. And
oh yeah, she hates me.
Bebo Shapiro, well, have a guess. He's been defending the IDF.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, Benny has called Palestinian people subhuman before, yes. So yeah, of course he's fine with the genocide of Palestinian people.
So we'll be getting into all that possibly next week. But as I said, today it's Rose of Moron. So I spotted this video ages ago. I did try and do a response a few months ago, but I had to pull that video for other reasons. Because I tried to also do some responses to some stuff India Willoughby said, and I had to pull the video, and I made a big clanger, so I had to pull that video. But anyways, now, so Rose of Dawn is basically saying the gay press doesn't support LGBT people. Basically, as you'll see, it's the LGBTQ press is not supporting the LGBTQ people she happens to like. But let's get into this.
Okay.
Oh, actually, before we do any of that, just to those who don't know who Rose of Dawn is, Rose of Dawn is kind of...
She does not look like that.
Rose of Dawn is the British version of Blair White. So, in other words, a true scum trans woman who hates herself and acts this out, basically by trying to throw the rest of us trans people under the bus. Okay? And I've actually got a question for Rose of Dawn. Which Koch brother did you have to suck off to get a leg up? Was it the one who's still alive or the one who's dead?
So many questions.
If you've ever looked into the wonderful...
Now, here's the sad thing about Rose, right? I don't think she looks that bad. In fact, I quite like that hairstyle.
Yeah.
It's just that she's got internalized transphobia because she hates herself. And it's a really sad thing.
Yeah, and that looks like a really low-budget recording studio.
The full wacky world of LGBTQIA+.
Yeah, I know what she's going to say in response to this. Well, at least I say stuff to camera. You don't. Well, so what? There's plenty. There are videos of me doing stuff to camera on YouTube.
Yeah, and I do stuff to camera, so
yeah, and I've done stuff to camera with you as well.
Yeah.
you know,
Funny how that works.
I did a 5-hour fucking marathon of a fucking video with you.
Let's not get into the 5-hour nightmare that is Ileani.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Funny enough, Ileani wasn't on the camera, was she? Anyways. Yeah. Anyways, let's get. God, we already got sidetracked, haven't we? Yeah. Fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Plus news, you've no doubt come across what is sometimes referred to as the pink.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to start this video again because she just said something which I need to pick up on.
If you've ever looked into the wonderful, wacky world of LGBTQIA+++ news, you've no...
Right, that's the first homophobic thing she has said. She does this, you know, LGBT plus AA blood, whatever, right?
Yeah, although admittedly, this isn't. All she did was add 2 more pluses and say it like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, she's saying it in a very sarcastic way, and she does this.
Yeah.
No doubt come across what is sometimes referred to as the pink press. Now, there's a good reason that this exists. After all, the mainstream media doesn't really have the capacity to cover every single story that is going on out there. So naturally, organisations are going to turn up, which claim to look into specific stories that are relevant to specific parts of the population. Now, there are some quite big names within LGBT news. Probably one of the biggest is Pink News. This is a British-based website that mostly deals with trans news nowadays, but previously it was mostly focused on the LGB section.
And that's a bad thing?
For one thing, just as a preview for Rainbow Shelter News, this is why I was like, you know, actually, you should probably come on, because there is a lot of Pink News, and a lot of it involves homophobia.
Well, anyways, so now the other, basically, she seems to think that Pink News speaking up for trans people is a bad thing.
Yeah, and also she implies that it doesn't
and
care
she's trans.
About gay people, and it's just like, I'm just like, homophobia, talking about homophobia, talking about homophobia, talking about transphobia, talking about homophobia, talking about homophobia, talking about homophobia and transphobia, talking about transphobia, transphobia.
No.
Like, it's very much a mixed bag.
Right, so now the next thing she's going to mention here is Gay Star News. Now, Gay Star News are nowhere near as big as they used to be. Right? At one point, they were a rival to Pink News. In fact, I wrote a few articles for them a few years ago. And Tris Smith, who's the editor, he's a good guy. But they're not as big as they used to be. So I don't know why she's still bigging them up. Because, really, not now.
You also have other websites like Gay Star News, again, another British website. But then you also have American outlets like LGBTQ.
Now, you see, I would say Pink News and LGBTQ Nation are the 2 biggest of the what she describes as the pink press, or as I would call LGBTQ news media.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's essentially
NBC Out is like a close one to major news.
So which one?
NBC Out.
No. You see, no. I don't class. You see, that's like saying the LGBTQ section of the Huffington Post. No, there are like big news sites which have LGBTQ sections, but the difference with Pink News and LGBTQ Nation is that they are specifically. That's what they are geared, specifically for.
I get that.
Right. Yeah, I'm not denying that it's not, it's a good thing that some of the major news sites do now have LGBTQ
subsections.
Yeah, And for instance, the BBC has an LGBTQ correspondent now, which is a good thing. But as I was saying, specifically with the Pink press, it is Pink News and LGBTQ Nation. As someone who has had to source a lot of stories on LGBTQ stuff, those are the two sites I primarily would go for.
Nation and Queerty, a website that describes itself as being without an agenda except the gay one. Now that's quite an important point that they're making there. A lot of these websites claim to be fairly unbiased, and instead they claim to represent the LGBT community as a whole. Now, is that really possible for news websites to openly do that? No, it really isn't. I mean, private news outlets very, very rarely show no bias in their subjects whatsoever. However, it's interesting when you get the LGBT websites claiming that they do just that. And this is because the LGBT community, as one would expect, is quite wide-reaching. After all, the only real things that we have in common are our sexualities or our gender, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, we all have our own different beliefs. We have our own set of morals and values, and it's quite hard to encompass all of that.
Okay, so essentially what she's going to be doing here is whining that the likes of Pink News and LGBTQ Nation have a left-wing bias. That conservative LGBTQ people like her don't get a look in. Well,
yeah,
but drum roll, Rose. That's because most LGBTQ people lean left of centre politically. Okay.
Well, they mention it right on that site. They have no agenda except the gay agenda, jokingly, but like honestly, they care about queer rights, which the Republican Party is absolutely against. So yes, an American newspaper is going to be,
and the Tory Party, who we had thought, had sort of basically got over the homophobic bullshit, have now sort of reverted back to being that. So this is why, Rose, you're on the wrong side of history, honey.
That into one political outlet. However, these places do really, really try, and whilst I've been incredibly critical of the LGBT press in the past, in this video I wanted to discuss some of the real inconsistencies that I've seen in their reporting, the way in which they speak about conservatives as opposed to those on the left, or the kind of subjects which they openly try to suppress, simply because it goes against a leftist narrative. Now, I want to start this by talking about the way in which they would cover a right-on LGBT person on the...
Yes, they are going to be biased towards human rights. And yes, human rights are generally, advocated for on the left.
Trans rights are human rights. LGBTQ rights are human rights. So, how dare the LGBTQ press be, I don't know, pro-LGBTQ?
Yeah.
The left compared to the way they discuss such people on the right, and you should hopefully get an idea of what I'm talking about. So I want to introduce you to this gay man right here. Now, a lot of you probably know who this is, and this is Owen Jones. Now, Owen Jones is a columnist for The Guardian, amongst some other outlets, but he is also very much known for his left-wing views. He is a socialist activist and he is a member of the British Labour Party. However, you wouldn't really understand that if you saw some of the coverage about Owen Jones. For example, here is a story that was ran in May 2019 by Gay Star News. The headline simply reads about how this is a gay man's opinion on Theresa May.
Well, his opinion is, kind of evident as to, his politics. If you read the fucking story, Rose, you need to read more beyond the fucking headline. Now,
too much reasoning.
Yeah, well, it's basically Theresa May blubbing her eyes out, and none of it, when she had to resign. None of us felt sorry for her. Can I just say? None of us did.
Yeah, well, when she fights against your right to live, yeah, it's hard to feel sorry for her.
It wasn't just. Well, actually, with Theresa May, weirdly, when it comes to LGBTQ stuff, she was actually. Well, she was a lot more pro LGBTQ than Boris. But there was stuff when she was Home Secretary. Basically, she had these vans with billboards going around various places where there was a high immigrant population, basically telling them to, immigrants to go home and stuff. And it's, she's just, though she might have been more pro LGBTQ than Boris, she was still a Tory and still as evil as any other Tory.
This followed Theresa May stepping down as being the British Prime Minister last year, and it's put to the audience as though this is just a run-of-the-mill gay man who has gone viral. Of course, if you know Owen Jones and you know his political leanings, it's anything but that. It's simply a tweet that a political activist put out there that went viral. But it is not portrayed in that way to the audience. You are led to believe that this is a general mainstream gay belief and what a lot of gay people are thinking, when really it's just what a lot of left-wing gay people are thinking. Now,
well, that's because most LGBTQ people, again, I'm going to say, that remind you here, Rose, are left of centre.
Are they as generous with somebody on the right? Let's say, for example, Darren Grimes. Now, here are a number of different headlines that have been ran by Pink News over the last year. And whilst Grimes' sexuality is certainly mentioned in the vast majority of them, you will also notice that they mention his political leanings, that he's a conservative, also that he is a Brexit supporter.
And that he supported Trump. Now, this is important to mention because Trump was hideously homophobic and transphobic. I mean, just before the Capitol rioters went, on their riot, Eric Trump, his son, was being as transphobic as shite at that Stop the Steal rally. So you neglected to mention that, didn't you, Rose?
And
of course, the LGBTQ press are going to be somewhat, not exactly nice to Darren Grimes because he's supporting politicians who want to kill us.
Well, also he's anti-trans.
Yeah.
And if you have an LGBT paper, it's not going to be an LGBT paper much longer if it actively wants to strip one of the letters from human rights. And also, so many problems, trendy pansexuality.
Oh, well, and talking of Owen Jones,
doesn't need pride anymore.
I forgot to mention this. There's me with Owen. That was actually outside a Jeremy Corbyn rally, funny enough, back in 2015. And I've met him a few times. And this will wind Rosa Dawn up as well. There's me with Diane Abbott. And that was at Pride as well, funny enough. That wasn't at Pride. That was, as I said, outside of Jeremy Corbyn rally.
LGBTQ people are still fighting for human rights. Why would we need Pride?
That's me. That's me with Diane Abbott at Pride. And here's me with Jeremy Corbyn at that same Pride later on.
You had a good Pride.
Well, that was 2015. Whoops, wrong video. Anyways, back to this video. Anyways, yeah.
And again, the way in which these headlines are written implicates that Grimes has said or done something wrong, that his views are incorrect and they're not in line with what you would expect gay people to believe. I mean, there's even a headline saying that he should know better because he is gay simply because of his comments on trans issues. So they're putting it out there that this is a gay conservative who is expressing the wrong views.
He is.
Well,
he is, and that's the majority opinion of the LGBTQ community. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on at the moment here with a minority of gays and lesbians having a go at trying to undermine Stonewall for speaking up for trans people, right? But they are a minority. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I guess Rosa Dawn would say, yes, well, you know, there are many people who agree with who are more conservative, blah 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 blah. There are, don't deny it, that there aren't conservative LGBTQ people, but they're in the minority, right? The majority opinion is what the LGBTQ press is going to reflect, and the majority opinion is don't shit on trans people.
And this is...
Yeah.
And it gives a subliminal message to their readers that simply being conservative is equated with having wrong takes in their opinion.
But it is.
Now, you could make the argument that Grimes has said some controversial things. So, do they apply this kind of logic to people on the left who say controversial things as well? Well, let's pick out somebody else. How about Monroe Bergdorf? Now,
oh, well, she's not going to like this. No, sorry, wrong one. There's me with Monroe. That's at Brighton Trans Pride.
Yeah.
The last one there was before.
Yeah, but like,
yeah, I've met Monroe, and she is really, really, really sweet. Okay.
The thing is, you can't just say controversial.
In fact, right, Monroe, I'm not kidding here, actually smelt the strawberries. She was that sweet, and also, she had time had time to talk. I spoke to her. Funny enough, this was just not long after she'd appeared on this Genderquake debate show on Channel 4, which, funny enough, Rose of Moron was in the audience, and basically it was a debate between TERFs and trans people, and it was Monroe Bergdorf and Caitlyn Jenner. And Jermaine Greer, of course, was on the same show. Arch TERF, of course, and it ended up with a bunch of TERFs in the audience shouting "penis" and "man" at Monroe Bergdorf. And as I said, Rosa Moron was also in the audience, so fuck knows what she was shouting. Anyways,
but like you can't just say, oh, controversial view. Every controversial view is exactly the same. It's controversial view that the earth is flat, so therefore that should have the same respect as the controversial view that all human beings should have human rights and equal opportunity.
Bergdorf is incredibly controversial. I have done a whole video discussing her, but for those who don't know, Bergdorf is a model and trans activist, and she really hit the headlines back in 2016 because of her comments on white people, not white supremacy, white people. And as a result of these comments, she lost a contract at L'Oreal.
Right, okay, this video's a little out of date. So, first of all, Monroe Bergdorf saying that all white people are racist. Rose, are you black? No. Therefore, do you know what it's like to be a black person? No. Do you know that sometimes white supremacy can be very subtle, right? But still, just as egregious. And that's the kind of thing that Monroe Bergdorf can pick up on. Now, she did lose her L'Oreal contract, but last year she won it back. She got it back when the whole Black Lives Matter thing took off, right? She was basically saying what a lot of black activists were saying, just a little ahead of the curve when it came to Black Lives Matter, right?
But I mean, people don't really get... So racism is used in two different contexts, and sometimes people conflate them or don't understand them. So,
but in a way, that also launched her own career. However, if you look at the gay press, they would really play down the controversy that surrounded Monroe, instead portraying it as simple racism or transphobia. For example, they mention in this particular article...
Well, simple fact is she has been subjected to racism and transphobia. There are other... she was going to be part of the National was it? There was a anti-child abuse charity. I forgot the full title. National Protection Care of Children, or whatever it is, and TERFs basically had a she really wanted to, they were going to do something to help trans children, right? And Monroe was going to be the figurehead for this campaign. TERFs, of course, had her removed.
Yeah.
So, and I know she's also been subjected to racism, and Rose of Moron has no place to talk about that.
Called that she's just called out white supremacy back in 2016. But as I mentioned, if you look at the comments that Monroe made, it is very clear she is not talking about white supremacy, but white people as a whole. Now let's compare the way...
Because most white people are white supremacists, they just don't realise it. Okay? I'm just going to say it.
In which they commented on Monroe Bergdorf's controversial comments with that of another trans person, my friend Blair White. Now, when they reported on a event organised by Walk Away back in March of last year, whenever they talked about Blair, they very much focused on how divisive and controversial her comments were. Again, that is something which they did not.
Because Monroe Bergdorf is always hating on trans people who are a marginalised group. Okay? White people, they ain't marginalised, okay? They're the ones with their hands on the levers of power, okay?
Yeah.
When it came to Monroe Bergdorf. Now, in fact, it's quite interesting that whilst they would give a lot of news coverage to the likes of Owen Jones and Monroe Bergdorf, unless they have a specific hate boner for them, like with Darren Grimes, the more conservative side of the LGBT community very, very rarely gets a look in unless it's a way of having a bit of a jab at them. For example, here is Brandon Starker, who just a few months ago caused a fuss on a flight when he refused to wear a face mask. And look at the kind of language which these outlets...
Well, helping to spread COVID, not exactly a friend of humanity, I would say. No, I don't like wearing a face mask, but I will do so because I'm not an inconsiderate bastard.
Yeah, but also, is breaking the rules of the airplane. So yeah they threw him off,
which they have every right to do.
Yeah.
It's used when talking about him. Give this a comparison with...
So Blair White, sorry, not Blair. Well, it is hard to get Rose of Moron and Blair White confused. But the deal is that, I do know that she put out a video about COVID when it all began. And, there's nothing much to worry about. I'll tell that to the 130,000 people who have died of COVID. Yeah, tens of thousands of more have died due to fucking incompetence. I mean, 130,000 is 130,000.
Hundreds of thousands in the US.
It's over 500,000, isn't it now in the US? That's last we heard.
That sounds right, but I'd have to look it up.
But no, I was going to ask.
It's more than 3K. It's more than 300,000. I know that.
Well, the point is that obviously Rose being a far right dipshit is is going to be and the whole anti-mask anti-lockdown bullshit just necessarily follows, doesn't it? Anyways, that's beside the point.
With Owen Jones, back when Owen was on TV discussing the Pulse massacre, he openly stormed off, and it became quite a meme at the time.
Yeah, I actually watched that live, okay, and Owen was visibly upset. The whole deal was that Julie Hartley-Torrey was on with him, and she was saying, this is an attack on all of us. No, it wasn't. It was specifically aimed at the LGBTQ community. This is
Yeah.
this is the whole this is a bit. It's a bit like those conservatives who always respond to Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. Which know is a racist fucking trope. Yeah.
And also like denying the Orlando massacre is homophobic. I mean, might as well have been denying that the Holocaust had anything to do with anti-Semitism. Like,
yeah,
it was very clear. Yeah, a gay bar gets shot up. You know what? Probably homophobic.
But could you imagine these outlets running that same language with Owen Jones, or the way in which that they would react if the right-wing press used similar words about Owen? We all know that they would accuse them of homophobia, but it's interesting that those kinds of words are okay when it is somebody on the conservative side. Now, you may be a right-wing LGBT person, but not high-profile like Darren, Blair, or Brandon, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's fine, that they're just big names, you would expect that, they wouldn't come for me. Well, yeah, they would as well. I mentioned in a video a couple of months ago about Brokeback Patriots and how Queerty ran a story basically just telling people not to have sex with him. And it was just nothing but a hit piece aimed at a...
Well, because he's got a fucking MAGA hat on, and Donald Trump wants to basically eradicate the fucking LGBTQ community.
Yeah, it would kind of be.
And those
difficult.
and those LGBTQ people who are stupid enough to support Donald Trump are those who are either are stupid or just have so much fucking privilege, like Caitlyn fucking Jenner. They don't understand how the other half live and how the other half will be persecuted. And nor do they understand that when they are surplus to requirements, they're on the kettle truck and off to the gas ovens along with me and OZMA. Right?
Man who they disagree with politically. It was a completely trashy article, but that was deemed acceptable for them to run. But they also put that same kind of view forward when just discussing conservative gay men. Here is an article from Pink News calling gay men who want to vote for Donald Trump in much bigger numbers than they were expecting, I gotta be honest, as saying that they lack any kind of morals. Like they're putting...
Well, they don't. Well, they certainly don't lack any empathy for the rest of the LGBTQ community. Yeah. I mean, they have the right to stick their own heads in the ovens, but not the heads of other LGBTQ people in the oven as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the problem. Rose of Dawn is in complete and fucking denial that Donald Trump is, was and still is extremely bad news for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going through Donald Trump's record and the rollback of legal protections for LGBTQ people with a certain Eleanor Clark days before the election, and I told her that if he was re-elected, it wouldn't be long before LGBTQ people were ordered to wear pink triangles in public. Because I did see similarities, some, and I know some people are going to say I'm hyperbolic and this is the wrong comparison. Like, well, no, it's not. I did see comparisons between the incremental persecution of Jews during Nazi Germany with what Trump was doing to LGBTQ people.
Yeah,
some people seem to think
trying to document all the trans people, and yeah.
Some people seem to think that as soon as Hitler came to power, they were killing Jews. No, it was a lot more incremental, and the final solution wasn't decided until January 1942. Though by that point they had started gassing Jews. Anyway.
Yeah. Also, I picked up the article about that mega person, and I just saw the most brain cell killing tweet that this person made. Liberal LGBT says Trump doesn't like me because I'm gay. If that's true, why did he send me this? I assume the hat. I think Trump does like me because he sent me this hat.
Oh,
Sorry,
gee.
I'm adding the because he sent me a hat.
Oh,
He
gee.
might actually, yeah, it's just like no, no.
and their
No.
morals to one side. So it doesn't matter whether you're a big
Just because Trump sends you a hat does not mean he likes you, okay? It's basically a knowledge that you're stupid enough to support him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if as I said before, LGBTQ people, if they want to stick their head in the oven, they have that right to do so individually, but they don't have the right to stick every other LGBTQ person's head in the oven. And that is exactly what they're doing by supporting Trump.
name or not, these publications are very openly wanting to attack you, and they're making it very clear that you have no place within this wider LGBT community. And this is a huge, huge problem when you're dealing with a community as big as this, one with plenty of different viewpoints out there. And they make it very obvious that they hate people.
Rose of Dawn is saying Rose of Dawn is upset that conservative LGBTQ people are quote unquote not welcome in the LGBTQ community. But Rose of Dawn also wants to exclude people from the LGBTQ community, mostly the other letters that aren't her. And honestly, the LGBT people, just, yeah.
Of a particular political leaning. Now, of course, media will always have its bias, and I will address that later. So let's move on to probably a bigger flaw of this kind of medium, and how the way in which they portray it as having no agenda, and the way in which they cover stories that really do affect the LGBT community. So a lot of you have no doubt heard of Parkfield. Now this is a school area in Birmingham in which it became quite high profile last year after a group of Muslim parents started to protest this LGBT inclusive education program which they were running. Eventually the protest became much larger than just the Muslims, and it included other religious groups. Now it was kind of an interesting situation because both sides really kind of had to decide who they were going to side with here. Was it the gays or was it the Muslims? But Pink News and the rest of the gay press decided to kind of have their cake and eat it. And they condemned the protests, but they completely left out who it is that was protesting them. And
right, okay, I wrote about this. The article is on Medium, and I did call out. Well, I called out all religion because it's always based on the same bollocks that. Supposedly some crusty old book, which religious people think is the word of God, says that LGBTQ people are bad, and that
it doesn't even say it that much.
Well, that's their
much of the book.
That's their interpretation, right? And they believe that this is the word of God. Their God being some non-existent mystical sky daddy. The thing is, I am not saying that I'm not saying there isn't homophobia amongst Muslims, right? But here's the truth from my experience with Muslims after I came out as trans. There's a guy who runs the local news agency, what you would call bodega. After I came out, he just basically asked me, he said, do you get any shit? And I said, yeah, I get some. And he said, stupid that people can't, understand that we're all different. And I was like really taken aback because, I had this prejudice that, that possibly I was wrong to have this prejudice. That him being a Muslim would take badly to me being openly LGBTQ, but he wasn't. And also there's a Muslim family who run the local cafe, or what you would call diner, and they have always addressed me with the correct pronouns. In fact, I went to use the female toilets, and a customer complained, and they said I have every right to do so. I am a woman, right?
Also, Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, exactly. So to say that all Muslims are homophobic or transphobic is wrong. I'm not denying that there aren't some, and obviously, the more extreme elements are always the ones who are more vocal, right? But they don't represent Islam. Okay, most there was that meme a few years ago that said most Muslims consider ISIS the same way most Christians consider the Westboro Baptists, and that's true.
Yeah.
No, most people I know do not like extremism, and so. But I just think that Rosa Dawn, I heard that she was a UKIPper. I don't know if that's true. She's definitely on the right of politics.
It wouldn't surprise me.
So it wouldn't surprise me that, she's a tad Islamophobic. And as I've said, I've fallen into that trap in the past as well, which I was wrong to do so. There you are. I do admit, some people say I don't admit when I'm wrong. Well, I have. There, I admit I've had my own prejudice. I do have my own prejudice against people of religion because I've had some bad dealings with people who are religious, and I'm not just talking about Muslims here, or I'm talking about Jews, I'm talking about Christians, even some Hindus, unfortunately. And you'd think that a religion like Hinduism would be a lot more open to that, to LGBTQ people. Yeah. And I've always pointed this out. I did a stream with Kevin Logan a while back, and I said that even Buddhism has its problems. The Tamil minority in Sri Lanka are persecuted by the Buddhist majority. Also in Myanmar, isn't it now? So I always, even I have to get used to not say Burma anymore. Myanmar, there is a Muslim minority there who are being persecuted by Buddhists, the Buddhist majority, the Rengu Muslims. So Buddhism has always been relatively open towards LGBTQ people. But what I am saying is, religion generally always one of the problems I've always had with organised religion is that it does seem to persecute someone or other who doesn't fit in with their sort of values, and those values are based on basically hocus pocus bullshit. Yeah.
Well, that relates to the lack of accountability in a lot of organized religions.
Well, I just find religion irrational. And I know some people say to me, yeah, but you're a person who sort of bigs up Passover, even though there's no historical evidence that Passover happened. I like the message of Passover, that it's about freeing yourself from slavery. Okay, that's what I take from it. Okay. For fuck's sake, does Christmas have what the fuck does Christmas have to do with Christianity these days?
Nothing.
Exactly. How many fairies on top of the Christmas tree is in the fucking Bible? None. Okay? But I love Christmas. So anyways.
This is a big problem when you're removing the context as to why this is happening. The gay press completely ignored something which is known as the British Attitude Survey, which indicated that there are particular ethnic and religious groups that have less of an acceptance to LGBT people compared to the wider British society. Furthermore, there are very few, if any, comments on another survey in 2016 on Muslim acceptance of the gays. And this is very important.
Right. Okay, as I said, I'm not denying there isn't an issue, right? But rather than taking opinions of religious minorities, how about taking opinions of the whole of the British society, right, as a whole? And, the vast majority of people in this country are accepting of LGBTQ people. I would say at least tolerant of LGBTQ people. Sorry, I shouldn't say accepting. I don't know if they're accepting, but they're at least tolerant of LGBTQ people. And that's better than...
Not recently, but yeah.
Well, that's the Conservative, the Tory government here. But what I'm saying is they're tolerant as in, you know, they're not going to throw fucking petrol bombs through or bricks through a window. On the whole, I know that there are isolated instances of that happening, as has happened in Northern Ireland recently. But you know, and Northern Ireland has its own issues with religion. What I'm trying to say here is generally, I think most people are at least tolerant, if not accepting, of LGBTQ people. Okay. Now, it would be nice if they were accepting, and I know some people, what's the difference? Well, the difference is, it's like tolerance, being tolerable is like, well, yeah, you're free to be LGBTQ people, but don't bother me with it, alright? Okay? That's being tolerable, right? Accepting is, hey, you're LGBTQ. Hey, do you want to come to our party? Yeah?
When you really want to address the context of why all of this was happening. And this is important to know for LGBT people as well, because if there are going to be conflicts between different groups, it's important to understand where everyone is coming from. By completely ignoring this, and instead in articles on Parkview, bringing in how Islamophobia is on the rise and bringing in kind of names to downplay any kind of Islamic influence on what was going on, it leaves the audience with a less of an understanding as to why any of this situation was happening. This is ultimately a failure of reporting and keeping their audiences properly informed. And of course, Parkview wasn't the only time in which they've done this. A lot of these outlets have been very vocal in their support of Black Lives Matter, and they have been for a number of years. When reporting on BLM in the past, a lot of these outlets have really kind of downplayed exactly what was happening. For example, in Edmonton, when their Pride event was shut down for 2019, they didn't really mention that a lot of this was because of pressure from Black Lives Matter. And when it is mentioned, so for example in Toronto, the activists are given a complete right of reply with all of their demands publicly listed. But they have also downplayed some of the...
Why do I think this is bullshit?
Well,
all the people I know involved with Black Lives Matter are very accepting of LGBTQ people. I'm not denying there isn't a minority involved with Black Lives Matter, possibly who aren't, but they're a minority.
Yeah, and I mean,
if you dig
enough, you might be able to find something.
This is just Rose being a typical right winger and trying to smear Black Lives Matter.
The attacks that BLM activists have taken part in against LGBT people. I mentioned earlier that they've only really talked about Brandon Straka in regards to his face mask incident, but they completely neglected to inform any of their audiences that BLM activists attacked him and Mike Harlow following the Republican convention. But going back to the right...
Yes, because they were winding them, they were trying to provoke them. That's why.
But
I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that's the reason.
Yeah, but like... the thing is, you're talking like nobody's been killed because of Black Lives Matter. People have been killed because of homophobia. People have been killed
because of exactly, and people have been killed for being black.
Yeah,
as well.
To reply, that is something which they did not give to what they consider to be TERF activists, in particular in this instance Get the L Out, who...
Right. Rose, were you there? Because guess what? I was there, right? And I'll tell you something, one of the complaints, and this actually came from one of the complaints I heard about Pink News' coverage of this, actually came from a Tory trans woman I know. Right, who I'm friends with, who I've got a lot of time for, as well. Yeah, she might be a Tory, but her heart's in the right place when it comes to supporting LGBTQ people and disabled people as well. I have to say that. She's a really lovely person. And she said to me that she felt that Pink News were too neutral about this incident. Now, for those who don't remember, it was a bunch of TERFs laid down in front of the Pride Parade in 2018, and as objecting to trans inclusion in Pride.
Yeah, I see that sign. Transgenderism erases lesbians.
Yeah, which derives from the far right racist conspiracy about the Great Replacement, which is that us Jews are encouraging mass immigration into the West to breed out white people.
Yep.
Which is bollocks.
Effectively took over the start of London Pride back in 2018 with a list of demands on basically getting the L out of LGBT. Now, we can have discussions as to whether or not these people are transphobic, however...
They are.
Once again, the gay press did not give them any kind of right of reply. They were simply...
Oh! How dare Pink News not give a platform to bigots? Ah! How dare they not give a platform to transphobic? Hold on, Rose, you are trans. You do remember that, don't you? Yeah?
Yeah, it's fine if they call Rose of Dawn a man because they're the fuck. I don't even know what to say. They're the sister supremacists. That's a good definition.
I've always said TERFs have a lot in common with the Ku Klux Klan. Because TERFs, they espouse cis supremacy. The Ku Klux Klan espouse white supremacy.
Labelled as being TERFs and transphobes, and simply left at that. This therefore leaves the audience not really knowing what it is that this group stands for. And
well, I'm sure that if they're really bothered about it, I'm sure there's some TERF website telling them what they're about. Oh, how dare Pink News not be fair to fucking bigots? Fuck off, they're pro-LGBTQ. You know, and can I remind you, there is a T in LGBTQ, and they basically Pink News are doing the right fucking thing here, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
This is a big problem when it comes to the coverage of trans issues as a whole. A lot of LGBT people, including a lot of trans people, don't necessarily agree with the direction which trans activism has taken.
No, you and your conservative cohorts don't. The rest of us are pretty on board.
And there are a lot of us who are writing opinion stories, we are going on YouTube, some of us are even going on national television to give our views, but you would not know this if you just listen to the gay press. They pretend that all of this is just a simple done issue. Look at the way in which they talked about Darren Grimes and that he is a gay man who should really know better when it comes to trans issues.
Well, he should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's part of the...
Any member of a group who has been persecuted through the fucking centuries should have bloody empathy for any other minority who's been, persecuted. I mean, yeah, I always get the one about, Palestinian. The 90% of Palestinians are really homophobic. That's always the statistic which is thrown at me by militant Zionists, right? And I go, well, here's the thing. That doesn't excuse. It's not a fucking excuse to fucking have an apartheid regime against the fucking Palestinians, is it? I have empathy for all people of oppressed groups, as I should. I believe in intersectionality.
Yeah, and it's only 27% of Israelis that are homophobic. Twice the amount percentage as in the UK.
Yeah, and look,
it's bad enough in the UK.
And look what happens anytime they try and hold a fucking pride parade in Jerusalem. What happens? Fucking Orthodox Jews turn up, and try and cause mayhem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how people never talk about that.
Yeah.
Or the way in which they talk about Ariel Scarcella, who they just consistently label as a TERF.
Well, she is.
Yeah, I mean, she's
the one who most of all has been espousing, lesbian erasure.
Yeah.
And she supported Trump. I mean, if she's going to complain about lesbian erasure, well, Trump will probably, if he is ever elected to the presidency again, would see to it that there is lesbian erasure.
And that doesn't even get into J.K. Rowling, who is not LGBT, but she certainly has views that a lot of people in the LGBT community respect and agree with.
What? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
she's like, she's like, all the trans people are converting kids to be trans. It's
Rose. The only two people I can think of who big up the fucking J.K. Rowling are you and fucking Blair White. They're the only two trans people.
No. Buck Angel.
Oh well, yeah. Why doesn't that surprise me?
Buck Angel has been slowly doubling down on TERF shit.
How dare the LGBTQ press be biased against J.K. Rowling for being a transphobic bigot? I mean, it's just really fucking stupid.
But because there are some activists...
I mean, it's stupid is like... Here's the thing. If Rosa Dawn is so pissed off with the way the LGBTQ news is reporting on stuff and the article, and whatever opinion articles they publish, well, set up your own conservative LGBTQ, news outlet.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be as big and popular for some reason.
That's the point, right? The thing is, it would fall flat on its fucking face, and that's what they can't deal with.
Who disagree with her, they run hit piece after hit piece. This gives out the impression that
they run hit piece after hit piece because she keeps on saying really bigoted, transphobic things.
There is only one answer on trans issues, and that to simply diverge from it means that you are automatically a hateful person. And this is not good when you are an outlet that claims to represent this entire community. When you're not even putting forward views like mine or Blair's, and you pretend that all of this is just simply done, it's not fair on the audiences, because they have no...
No, it is perfectly fair on the audience, right? Because they wouldn't publish those stories unless there was an audience. In other words, they're responding to to their readership. If the readership was decidedly, twisted and conservative like you are, Rose, then they wouldn't publish the stories they do. But because most LGBTQ people lean to the left politically, that is why they publish the stories they do. And if you're not happy about it, why don't you and Darren Grimes and Blair White and Buck Angel all fuck off and have your conservative LGBTQ news outlet? I'm sure Rupert Murdoch or the fucking Koch brothers, well, actually it's the Koch Foundation now, isn't it? Would, support you doing it.
Other idea on what's really going on. And of course there are other issues that they pretend are a done deal when they aren't, and one of the big ones is drag kids. Now, I find the idea of little children doing drag to be incredibly disturbing, and that is a view that is shared by a lot.
So, would you have a problem with a kid dressing up for Halloween?
Well, yeah, but like...
Also, Rose, didn't you know you were trans quite early on? Because I know that she actually did transition quite, when she was quite young. So she would have had some sort of inkling that she was trans from quite a young age. I mean, I did. I was 4 fucking years old, and being prevented from socially transitioning really fucked up my life.
lot of people
Yeah.
in the LGBT community. But again, the gay press does not want you to know that. They want you to think that all of this is fine and it's empowering and that it's homophobia to stop 10-year-olds from prancing around in scantily clad costumes. Like, again, that is
Why are
not
you assuming
a
they're
universally
scantily clad?
accepted view within the LGBT community. So why is this so bad? I mean, after all, a lot of news publications out there openly have their own biases, so why can't the gay press? Well, there is a big difference. Whilst a privately owned news outlet can absolutely have whatever views that they like, the likes of Fox News or the Daily Mail or the Guardian aren't claiming to speak on behalf of an entire group of people. They know what their audience is, they know why their audience comes to them, and it's fair that they reflect their audience. However, the LGBT press does not really have that.
Yes, it does. It's just not reflecting your opinion, and that's what you're pissed off with yet again, for the third time. If you don't like it, set up your own fucking news site, okay?
Yeah.
Now, this isn't the only video by Rosa Dawn which we're going to be responding to today. Next week is Pride Month, right? Now, unfortunately, a lot of prides have been cancelled because of COVID. Pride in London has there's a date in September. Unfortunately, it's the 11th of September. Can't imagine what happened on that day 20 years ago.
I mean, well, for one, that was like, what, 20 years ago? So.
Yeah. Well, anyways. So, hopefully Pride in London will go ahead in September. I know that there's going to be an attempt to have Trans Pride London on the 26th of June. I might see if I can go to that, because by that point, hopefully my leg will be better and I'll be 9 out of 10% immune with the COVID jab. Anyways, right. So,
don't push yourself harder than you have to.
Anyways, if you're wondering where the term trans stupid comes from, this obviously is based on Sargon of Akkad's This Week in Stupid. And funny enough, Rose is friends with Carl.
Well, yeah.
Anyways, she's got a few things to say about Pride. Now, to explain as I did at the beginning, there's a lot of talk at the moment about should people who are into really kinky stuff be allowed at Pride, okay? And it's not just coming from, anally retentive conservatives like Rose. It's also coming from left-wingers like Volsh. And I know that Demon Mama has had a few choice words to say about stuff which Volsh has been saying about how Pride shouldn't have people into sort of kinky fetish type stuff at Pride. My take on this is that people need to remember LGBTQ history and what happened after the Stonewall riots. The Stonewall riots were instigated by trans women. But soon after and even though the Stonewall riots kicked off the LGBTQ civil rights movement, trans people got thrown under the bus in the early 70s because a lot of lesbian and gays felt that they couldn't be taken seriously if they were also advocating for trans people.
Yeah.
Now, people need to remember this because it's the same sort of bullshit here. There is an awful lot of kink shaming. Now, I have my kinks. I'm not going to go into details.
Sure.
And I went to boarding school and I was shamed constantly because some people found out about one of my kinky activities. Okay, and it was nothing. It was harmless. Okay, it was nothing. Involving children and animals. I can tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're constantly being made to feel ashamed for something which is totally natural, That's really bad. And it's the same. It's the same. You know, this is what they used to do to lesbians and gays, and they've done it to trans people as well. They should not do it to people who have, fetishists. No, it's wrong.
Well, I mean,
Now,
I think
whether those fetishists should be on display in the middle of a street in public, okay, we could have a debate about that. I understand that there are some, legitimate arguments to oppose to that. Okay, but generally, I think people walking around in a BDSM harness, at some pride parade, is not, soiling anyone's eyes. I'm sorry, I just don't. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing is that we really need.
I mean, where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line with the whole kink thing? Because I remember a few years ago, Pride in London, and I couldn't believe this. Pride in London were going to ban. Pride in London so what?
I was halfway through a sentence.
Sorry, I'm on one tonight, aren't I?
I was going to say that a lot of this just you need to there needs to be a lot of banding together of people who are being shamed for existing. People are shamed for being black. People are shamed for being LGBTQ. People are shamed for having kinks. People are shamed for being disabled. People are shamed for all sorts of reasons, and pride should not be a place about shame.
Exactly. And for all of those who have said, oh, we can't be taken seriously because of people walking around in BDSM harnesses, well, where do you draw the line? Because a few years ago, Pride in London were thinking about banning drag queens because some people see drag queens as cross-dressing as a fetish. And for some people, it is. But what's the harm? I don't see any harm in it. Oh, but what about the children? There's a thing called Godwin's Law, which is if someone called Godwin basically said that in the infancy of the internet that someone had lost an argument when they brought up Hitler, right? Well,
given how much we've brought up Hitler, I hope that's not the case.
Right. Well, when they brought Hitler into the argument, but I actually think when someone brings up, what about the children? They've also lost the argument. Because I've had so many arguments with people about drug prohibition and why it's asinine. And, they see the logic, as to why it would be better that drugs should be legalized. But then all of a sudden they'll bring up, what about the children? Well, you stop children from drinking alcohol, so, you can stop them from smoking marijuana. Okay, there you are. But anyways, the whole thing about what about the children at Pride Parade? Well, let's get into it, and because I've got a few thoughts. Okay, I'm just going to say something else. I like Rose's hair, and I do like her intro, right? It's not all bad with Rose, right? And I should always point out to people, I don't hate Rose. I feel sorry for her more than anything, because it's obvious to me that the likes of her and India Willoughby, maybe a little less so with Blair White, that they're basically they've got internalized self-hatred, and self-hatred is internalized, but
they're
basically
that's the self-comment.
They're acting out, right? And that basically what they need is someone to give them a hug. That's what they need, and say, hey, look, it's all right to be trans. It's all right to be footloose and fancy-free. Stop being so anal.
It depends on how self-reflective they are.
I went to school with a guy, as I said, I went to boarding school with a guy who really was extremely anally retentive. And, it's kind of like, hey, look, what you need to do is drink some mushroom tea, smoke a joint, and get laid.
Well,
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Trans Stupid, where I take a look at the wonderful world of LGBTQIA++ news.
Yeah, she's doing that again.
Because, well, stupidity is intersectional. So this week's episode...
So's bigotry. In fact, in some ways, some bigots are more intersectional than some trans people can be in supporting other oppressed minorities. I'm not kidding. Some bigots, most bigots are, you know, you come across a bigot who's going to be racist is more likely, the most likely also going to be homophobic, transphobic, yeah. But whereas trans people, you know, they'll go on about trans rights, but will they go on? But will they also support disability rights? Well, you know, that isn't always the case. It should be, you know.
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's going to be a little bit different, and I want to focus on one particular subject and a couple of stories that are kind of branching out as a result. June, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, was Pride Month around the world, with lots of virtue signalling companies showing everyone how...
Okay, look, I don't deny that corporations don't use pride for means of you know...
Yeah, everybody knows that.
Basically to get LGBTQ people to buy shit, okay? And this includes Lego, who recently, you know, releases its first LGBTQ pride set. And believe me, conservatives in America are getting their panties in a twist about this.
Yeah.
You know, Lego, from what I know, as a company, are pretty pro-LGBTQ when it comes to their employment. In other words, well, not pro, I would say inclusive. So if I say pro-LGBT, it sounds like they only hire LGBTQ people. No, they're inclusive of LGBTQ people, right? And obviously that's a good thing. And many companies are. Now, have I seen floats at Pride of companies who have got really dodgy records when it comes to LGBTQ inclusion? Yes, I have.
Yeah.
In fact, I do remember seeing a float for BEA Systems, which is an arms manufacturer. Pride should be about love, not killing. So, yeah. Now, I like Lego. I always have since I was a kid. And in fact, there I am. That was taken just before the lockdown at the Lego store in London.
Yeah.
I remember I dragged my fiance in there. And I would also say, you know, because I can see that people say, oh, you know, you're forcing LGBTQ pride on little kids, you're sexualizing little kids with, you know, Lego, bloody, 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 you know, all the... well, yeah, that's always the conservative bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not... No, that...
It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And plus also... most people will have a sense of, you know, their sexuality and their gender identity a long time before they come of age. I can tell you that. All right, I did.
Yeah.
You know? So, but
I have a story about that.
But
later.
the other thing I would say about Lego and being, you know, and their first LGBTQ pride set. When I was going for what people might not know is that a lot of Lego sets are now aimed at adults, because there's been a lot of people who've grown up with Lego, and you do get those more adult type sets now. So it's
although there's still like the sort of wanting to have specific Lego sets based off of gender is still like...
Well, hold on. Let me see. I think it's the Lego architecture sets. Hold on. I'm just looking this up. Yeah. So you get these... You get these sets which are not made for kids.
Yeah. Although kids could use them.
Yeah, but they're more aimed at adults. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Right. Oh, that Taj Mahal one, they're really good.
They're always expensive.
Yeah, and they are quite expensive. So, yeah, Lego is you know, it's across the board. But I don't see what's the harm. I mean, look, the basically exposing kids to LGBTQ pride at an early age, it helps foster tolerance of LGBTQ.
Yeah, and
that's the point that no one seems to make, and that's the point which needs to be made. Anyways, let's get back to Rose's diatribe.
How tolerant and progressive they all are. Pride in London, which was held over the last weekend, actually comes just outside of that whole month, but it's quite a big deal in the UK. In fact, it's probably the largest Pride event. And I wanted to discuss my thoughts on Pride.
Weirdly, and this is weird, okay? I was told that Pride in London, the participants on the parade is now a smaller amount of people than in the 90s.
Oh.
As a whole, and I figured I could touch upon them in this video. Now, before I go into actually discussing what happened at Pride in London...
Also, she's complaining about corporations' virtue signaling, using pride. One of the reasons why there's been an argument about including people who are into kink, who have kink, is how corporatized pride has become.
Oh.
I mean, pride now, you will see lots of floats, of various corporate names. Okay, basically using pride to basically promote themselves. Okay, and I know that there are people on the left who object to this because, as I say, some of those corporations have some very dodgy records when it comes to LGBTQ inclusion. Also, there are still many LGBTQ people suffering persecution in this world, and that they don't want, corporations to be making a profit out of that. Well, that's perfectly understandable. However, I'm of the opinion that it's a good thing rather than a bad thing that corporations are now proud. I wouldn't say
proud.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. Well, they are happy enough to support LGBTQ pride. It's better that they do than they don't. Okay.
Yeah.
And these days, it's more visible those corporations which don't than do. In other words, you wouldn't see a Chick-fil-A float at a LGBTQ, parade, nor would you see My Pillow, float at a yeah. So, I don't have I personally, and the other reason I don't have a problem, particularly when it comes to Pride in London, with there being corporate floats, is that all those corporations actually ensure that Pride in London is free. Those prides, you will get charged to for a slot on the march, and you will get charged to go into the actual event at the end of the march, right? And that doesn't happen at Pride in London, and that enables me to wave a flag in support of trans rights, to wave a flag going around London, being cheered on, for free. So, that's my thoughts on that one.
I want to take you back to 2018, where a group of lesbian activists calling themselves Get the L Out took over the start of the parade to push the message that trans activists are erasing women and lesbians. Now, I did a whole video at that time discussing the protest, and a link to that will be in the description below if you want a little bit more detail. But just to kind of give a bit of background, a lot of trans people said they felt attacked as a result, and that Pride was no longer a safe and welcoming place for trans people. That's quite important to take.
weirdly, there's a lot of trans people I know who don't think that even the likes of Brighton Trans Pride or London Trans Pride is a safe place for trans people. Because they can be a target for TERFs. I'll be honest enough to say that I was at Brighton Trans Pride back in 2019, and as we started off the parade along Brighton Seafront, there were a bunch of TERFs shouting abuse at us. They were a small number. I'd heard that they had tried to get into the park where the main event was being held, but they got spotted and were turned away. Yeah. Unfortunately, TERFs being the rampant bigots that they are, and believe me, these people are extreme. In this, obviously they've not, taken up arms yet to kill us. It's only a matter of time, isn't it? But the thing is, these people who who really do actually have as much the fear from the far right as trans people are getting into the bed with the far right, because the far right hates trans people just as much as they do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're arguing for getting people out of an inclusive event, inclusivity is vital for marginalized groups to make any sort of difference at all. Like, if Black Lives Mattered, kept disabled people out, that's not helpful for Black Lives Matter. Similarly, if Pride starts excluding letters from the LGBTQ community, it's not.
I just want to say to
it's
folks,
less people.
I just want to say to folks in the chat, I will get to your point at the end, but we need to get through these videos. So, okay, I'm not ignoring you. I am saying stuff people are saying.
Take into account when we're discussing what Pride in London was actually like, and it's also good to know that this is the 50th year of there being Pride events, and they were.
Sorry, did I just hear that correctly? She said it was good. She said Pride was good.
Yeah.
Yet she's always whining about it.
Calling it a Pride Golden Jubilee. Now, I think there was quite a big push from the trans community to make this year's Pride all about them. For example, gender activist and professional victim Travis Alabanza managed.
Now, that's rather nasty. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me, Rose, when trans women are shot, are they playing professional victim? Are they just faking being dead? All those trans women who have been killed in the United States, they're just faking it, aren't they? They're just being professional victims. I mean, the other irony with Rosa Moron is that there's another video where she complains about professional trans women, right? Like Paris Lee's, and it's like, well, what the fuck are you? Yeah, you're always on. You're. I mean, if you're a fucking trans YouTuber, always, throwing trans people under the bus. Well, you're a professional trans woman. Rather twisted and sick one, but
managed to get a piece written in the Metro saying that London Pride should be led by trans people this year. And Travis comments that he believes we are facing an epidemic of transphobia, hate crime increasing, mental health decreasing, our community is out of breath, and with Pride Weekend approaching, it's hard not to feel cynical.
Well, there is an increase in hate crime and transphobia. Obviously, you have got way too much privilege, my darling, to realise this.
I think that this is quite an interesting take. Travis is someone who is just an artist and hasn't really done much besides telling everyone how victimised they are. And Travis references a BBC report on there being a massive rise in transphobic hate crimes. But this ignores the fact that you have police organisations like in Yorkshire, where they've been very heavy-handed, and obviously so, with people being reported to the police just for retweeting limericks. It seems like that kind of evidence is just reinforcing to these professional victims how hated they are by everyone. So just how hard was Pride?
Can I just point out the irony here? Rose, you are actually compounding. You know, if you're saying that they're professional victims always looking to be hated, well, you're actually fueling that fire.
Yeah.
For trans people. Well, in the way that it was a whole reaction to what Get the L Out were doing. Whereas last year it was a message saying that trans women will never be women and transitioning is erasing women and girls. This year it was led by a group called L with the T. In fact, this is what Pride was promoting above all else. Pink News ran with a story saying trans-inclusive lesbians lead Pride in London year after anti-trans protests. Now,
actually, I have to tell you a story about this actual particular Pride, right? The year before, we were near the front, right? So we knew what was going on, right? With the Get the L Out, right, protest, right?
Yeah.
This particular Pride, the year afterwards, we were near the back, and we actually had to be moved because a bunch of TERFs came past. And I had to tell you about my Tory trans friend. Right, I can't. She's asked me not to name her. Okay, so I won't. I have to respect that. But she, I saw her basically shout to these TERFs. Will you just shut the fuck up, really loudly? Yeah. As I will say, not all Tory trans women are like Rose of Moron.
The actual picture for L with the T kind of depends on where you're seeing the source. With Pink News, you can clearly see a group of women holding the sign, whereas if you're looking at Pride in London themselves, how many of these people are women exactly? Like, how many of these people are lesbians? And what's more, you've got political messages alongside saying that institutional racism is real. And then there's another sign talking about white privilege and how white people need to check it. And I'll touch on that subject in just a few moments. But
oh, how dare Pride be diverse? Oh,
how dare people who aren't marginalized support marginalized people? That would be the worst.
Yeah.
If we got like cis-hets on our side and we're supporting our rights, that would just be awful.
Well, Rose, you know, at least we're seeing some intersectionality at Pride. So that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
L with the T wasn't the only trans-inclusive message that was being pushed. Shortly behind L with the T was B with the T. And then there were people pushing G with the T. And the screen on Piccadilly Circus then said everyone with the T. In fact, Piccadilly Circus...
And what the fuck is wrong with that? What's the problem?
Everyone supporting your human rights? What a horrible, stupid thing.
Jeez.
What the fuck?
The sign was showing lots of different Pride-related messages, which is not surprising at all, considering the event going on. But the glut of them appeared to be aimed at trans people and validating trans people. Black trans lives matter. Trans rights are human rights. There was so much of this being pushed. And I think Pride's big message to everyone was, like, fine, it will make this all about trans people. And to their credit, I haven't seen anyone moaning about this. The whole event was centered around trans people and making sure that they are included. Doesn't matter whether you disagree with the notion that lesbians should be attracted to trans women. You know, if you disagree with that, then there's no...
What the fuck has it got to do with anything?
Absolutely nothing, actually.
Yeah. Because you just have to drop that in because she's basically she's being a mouthpiece for fucking TERFs here.
Yeah, because like for instance, if you have a trans woman who looks identical to a cis woman in every aspect, has had gender confirmed sputum surgery, all blah 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 blah, just all these factors that that makes they're indistinguishable by any matter. Why does it matter if a cis woman lesbian is attracted trans woman lesbian with all those factors? There shouldn't be any reason outside of there's no conceivable reason outside of bigotry, and so then you start to ask the question, at what point do things matter? And people can call themselves lesbians and not be a fan of anything other than vaginas, and that's fine. And people can call themselves lesbians and be fine with trans women with dicks. Like it's how you describe yourself is whatever makes the most sense to you. God, I was worried. I was afraid there you're gonna put it at like the slower speed.
There's no place for you in Pride. You know, TERF's not allowed and all that. And surprisingly, I didn't see any kind of narrative from trans people that they felt that they were being ignored. It was almost like they realised that they can't push the victim narrative here, but this doesn't necessarily mean some people didn't try. As an example...
Hold on. Basically, at the previous Pride in London, there was a specific protest against trans people. Okay?
Yeah.
That is, and Pride in London were trying to rectify it. They're trying to make up for that. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what was going on. They were saying there is T in LGBTQ. What's the problem with that, Rose? What's the problem?
Example, when I was on the South Bank with some friends, I saw Travis Alabanza perform.
You have friends? Boy. Yeah. Do they wear jackboots and swastikas by any chance?
Performing, and by performing, I mean somebody else was DJing whilst Travis was wandering around on stage aimlessly. I actually tweeted about this because I just kind of thought Travis's appearance here is ultimately pointless. There's somebody else doing the work.
Right, we know you don't like Travis. Okay.
And to be fair, that DJ was playing good music. Travis wasn't really contributing much, but Travis saw the tweet and retweeted it saying that I was a hateful person and I couldn't take a day out.
Well, you are.
Just to not hate.
Well, why spend your pride hating? I wasn't doing a set. I was hosting a party with my dear friends. Everyone else loved it. Sorry you couldn't find room in your heart to not hate for a day.
Interestingly
okay.
enough, Travis would have to actually search for their name. I didn't tag them in the post, but it wouldn't be Travis if they weren't trying to find any way of being a victim. And naturally, this retweet got them a lot of hugs, and I got a few questions back from myself.
That's not... Travis wasn't playing the victim. That is legit. Travis laughing at you, Rose of Dawn. That's Travis laughing at you. That's not Travis saying that. That's not Travis suggesting any sort of victimization or even prejudice. It's just saying that it's just shitting on you, Rose of Dawn. That's all that's doing. That's okay. Sorry you're such a snowflake, Rose of Dawn. I
consider this a pride gift, Travis. Happy Pride. I made sure that you weren't left out. I mean, after all, if you weren't a victim, you wouldn't have a job. And so whilst this year's Pride was very inclusive of the...
That's very anti-Pride, what you've just said.
Yeah, I mean, Pride is about getting rid of shame.
Yeah, it's about love, right? And... yeah, you are a hateful person, Rose. He's right to point that out. Sorry, they have a right to point that out.
Tranners, what about the TERFs? Well, this is where it can kind of get a little bit interesting as well. There have been gender-critical activists this week.
Gender-critical. Those who describe themselves as gender-critical are the people who are least critical of gender. It's like penis, boy, vagina, girl. That's it, right? Well, we know science has proven penis does not make a man. You know, vagina does not make a girl.
week, very much fighting against Stonewall's education when it comes to trans issues and what they see as an erasure of lesbians. It's becoming an increasingly prevalent thought amongst the gender-critical crowd. Not all of them believe this. I've actually seen quite a big number of gender-critical activists believing that transitioning is a form of gay conversion. No, I don't think that that is entirely correct.
That's absolute bullshit.
I don't think it's entirely correct as the trans woman.
TERF's going around saying that we are forcing people into transitioning, which is what J.K. Rowling sort of intimated in her diatribe. Can I just say, people who say that know nothing of the fucking trans community, because there are many trans people who are really, shall I say, snooty and elitist. And I'm not just talking about true scummers, though that is the case with true scummers. That you're not trans enough for their liking, and they will try and they're projecting their own insecurities onto you. And so, and there's a lot of dissuading of people to transition, even if they should transition. I mean, that happened to me very early on, 20 years ago. I had the misfortune of meeting, one of the most archetypal true scummers you can think about, and that really fucked me up for a while. Now, as it goes, I took myself away, and I eventually transitioned, and I'm a lot happier for having transitioned.
Yeah.
But that was my decision. I mean, I've always said this. I will not say one way or another whether someone should transition. They have to make that choice themselves. But once they've made that choice, I will try and help them as best I can.
Correct at all. Yeah. There's certainly arguments you can make for people being told that they are trans when they are not, but grouping, for example, trans men in with trenders is really not helpful. These are two different groups of people who are going to be going through different things, and if you're going to be showing pictures of the results of trans-related surgeries, this should be a more of a wake-up call saying, are you sure that you are trans? Because this is what trans people actually go through, rather than just, oh, these poor young women and girls, when what we're talking about is trans men who have opted into that surgery being fully aware of how intense and extreme it is. But I digress. The Guardian actually reported a row as lesbian group asked to leave National Theatre bar. They said the National Theatre has become embroiled in a bitter war of words after a group of lesbians were refused service in its Green Room bar in the run-up to London's Pride celebrations. The women and their supporters claim their treatment at the hands of staff who called the police was a response to their campaigning stance in a gender identity dispute. Other witnesses in the bar have described their behaviour as disruptive. The small group who arrived with placards include Anne Ruslio, a political activist and former member of the Bexhill and Battle Labour Party, who on Friday night was one of those who complained on Twitter. She was wearing a t-shirt bearing the slogan "Lesbian, a woman who loves other women," and tweeted that staff at Green Room had called the police to have women and lesbians removed because they don't like the t-shirts they are wearing. However, the theatre said it respected and valued their trans staff company and audience members. As such, if the behaviour of visitors impinges on their ability to feel supported and safe, we will take action. So what we effectively have is two sides of the same story, with both groups ultimately feeling a little bit victimised here. There isn't really any footage of what was discussed, so I don't want to take any sides in this because we simply aren't going to know. It would concern me, however, if people are being removed just for having a particular view but not enforcing it on people. But
the thing is, TERFs do force it on other
Yeah.
It's like a bunch of skinheads turning up, at a kosher restaurant where there's a bunch of Orthodox Jews. They're not going to be welcome, right? Because they're not going to shut up with their anti-Semitic bullshit.
Yeah.
Provided they are not shouting at people in there saying that they are wrong and stupid if they're doing that to members of
staff,
then that's
were.
absolutely reprehensible. But I'm not so sure whether that is ultimately what happened or not. But I now want to discuss some of the political messages that were at Pride, and ultimately this is where I kind of discuss a little bit more of my thoughts on what Pride is as a movement. Now, one of the big narratives which people like Travis are pushing is that transphobia is at an all-time high, and that trans people, LGBT people, we're constantly being attacked. But is this really the case? Look at the people who turn up at Pride. Look at the amount of business.
Sarah Savage tweeted the other day, I forgot what the actual statistic is, but the Times of London have published over 200 stories this year on trans issues. That's more than one a day. Okay, this is just 2021.
Yeah.
Okay. None of those stories were written by any trans person, and then most of them, I would imagine, were decidedly transphobic. Sorry, what was that, Rose, about, dismissing that transphobia is at an all-time high? I mean, the BBC has become decidedly transphobic. The BBC is supposedly meant to be impartial. The media is against us. The political establishment is against us. Look at how, Keir Starmer has sat on the fence about trans rights. You would expect the Labour Party to speak up for trans rights. We are under attack, constant.
Look at the local governments, political parties, the police, the mayor. The fact that you can get an entire part of one of the biggest cities on earth closed just to praise you. And you're trying to say that we're living in such a hard time for trans people? Try going back 10 or 20 years. Try going back...
Pride is one day.
Yeah.
Right? It's one day. It's one, obviously there are various prides around the country, when they do go ahead. But you can't say, oh, well, there's less transphobia now because, trans people, there are prides. But, we're talking about trans people in their everyday lives. We're talking about how, the media and the political establishment being decidedly transphobic influences ordinary people to also be transphobic towards trans people struggling to get, with the day-to-day.
And people were being assaulted on British streets as a result. I can guarantee you that these figures are not going to be anywhere near what they were back then. And bear in mind, I've actually asked the Metropolitan...
Right. She's kind of right and she's kind of wrong. Okay. Let me explain. We are going on recorded anti-LGBTQ hate crimes, okay? And they haven't always been recorded. So we don't know back in the 80s, certainly, I would say the 80s were a lot darker time for LGBTQ people. But what we have noticed is particularly with the rise of Nigel Farage and UKIP was the rise of anti-LGBTQ hate crimes.
Police for figures on how many online hate crimes are being reported. And it turns out that between 2017 and 2019, there was only 4 online hate crimes against trans people. 4. And yet there is an epidemic of this. But then look at some of the messages that are being pushed within Pride as well, because a lot of these aren't.
So...
That's online. It's funny.
Yeah, but also, those are clearly online... recorded, because if you're talking about online, the amount of online hate crimes that TERFs have done, that's been significantly more than 4. It's just whether or not it counted, it gets recorded for that.
I mean, look, the most unless I get threatened with physical abuse, I will not report it to the police, right?
Yeah.
Well, unless I get threatened with physical abuse, or I am stalked, okay, and I have been cyber stalked, then I will not report it to the police, or I will not threaten to report it to the police. Okay. It's generally my role.
LGBT related. Going back to the specific photo Pride in London push, you'll see people pushing things like white privilege and institutional racism, which aren't actually LGBT issues. I know the whole intersectionality means that every issue is an every issue thing, but these are separate. You don't necessarily need to be believing one or the other just because that you are LGBT. But what's more...
So it's helpful, you do.
Yeah, I mean, human rights are...
Human rights.
Human rights are human rights, and it shouldn't matter if you're black, if you're LGBTQ, if you're disabled. The amount of accessibility for wheelchair access is still terribly low, and that is in itself a form of segregation.
More amazing is particular signs saying things like capitalism kills. Amazingly,
Well, it does.
Yeah,
the whole movements
technically.
for LGBT people actually started in capitalist countries like the United States. Interesting that the socialist states never really pushed.
That's not really an argument. That doesn't say that's a correlation. Rows have done is basically like correlation equals causation. That's not how that works. I mean, yeah, UNL's was a capitalist place, Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And there are lots of people who got killed there. Like, what the fuck do you mean?
Oh,
like,
no, but of course, Rosa Donald probably tell us that the Nazis were socialists because they have socialists because they were national socialists. Yeah, that's like saying that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is a democracy. It's not. It's otherwise known as North Korea.
Yeah, and also...
But of course not.
Also, in terms of the hate crime, like a quarter of people in a survey with regards to transphobia experienced physical assault, and 17% had experienced sexual assault or threat of sexual assault. Sorry, the 26% was physical assault or the threat of physical assault. So, like, it's not that sounds like an epidemic. Just a little bit.
None of that's real socialism. 24th time's the charm, I guess. Part of me really wants to join in the parade next year and really push for free markets, free speech, full-on individualistic freedom. And if you watch my...
Tell me, do you also, as well as sucking Koch brothers' cock, do you also wank over Ayn Rand novels, by any chance?
Video that I did with Book Angel last night, he seemed very much up for the idea, but it's something I'm really toying with. If we're going to have a lot of far-left messages pushed in what is ultimately an event that's supposed to be for everyone, then why not have another angle to it? I mean, it could at the very least be a little bit of trolling, but we could really have some fun with this.
And of course, when you get eggs and spat on, then you'll complain that you'll complain about being the victim. If you did that, Rose, can I just point that out? Yeah?
Look, eggs are basically the same as concrete, so, like...
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that anyone should, all right? Look,
well, yeah.
It's fine if you... I'm sure that the ad was... I forgot that... I'm just remembering off the top of my head. I think the Libertarian Party LGBT group was called Out Libertarians or something. I'm sure they've been on Pride parades in America.
Yeah.
Plus, also, it's not completely unrelated. I remember a few years ago, I think it was in Canada, somebody displayed the Israeli flag at a Pride parade. And there was a whole, that's a fascist symbol and whatever else. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Can I just... I've always said this about the Israeli flag. It's the flag of all Israelis. Not just the far right, okay? Always remember that.
Now, I actually do think that Pride is not a bad thing. I'm actually quite for the idea that people want to celebrate the achievements that LGBT people have had or the struggles that people have had.
Yeah, but you don't seem to be terribly enthusiastic for those achievements, Rose. That's the problem.
Bear in mind, it's still not the easiest thing in the world to come out as LGBT, although...
Yeah, and you don't make it any fucking easier, do you?
Recognizably, we have made many progresses over the recent decades. I've no issue with people coming together and doing this, and in fact, I actually quite enjoy going to Pride. It can be a bit of a laugh. My biggest concern with the way that Pride events are run, however, is when you get openly fetishistic people forming a part of the parade, and this being celebrated as though this is LGBT. For example, you have people dressed up as human puppies, or you have this bizarre picture that the BBC ran with a group of men dressed as toddlers. Interestingly enough, the BBC later removed this picture from their reporting and changed it with something else. But this was almost pushed as an...
Here we go with the whole kink shaming. Right. Look, it's not... None of this... I'm not... These days, my my sexual behaviour is very, very vanilla. But, hey, look, what's the problem?
Yeah, if they're not doing if they're not sexualizing their kink, and I realize
people aren't fucking in the middle of the streets, are they? So yeah, I guess that's what she's going to say next. What next? People fucking in the middle of the streets? No.
An image of this is what being trans is. And that's a huge problem when you're mixing fetishes with being LGBT. I want to make it clear I'm not kink shaming or anything along those lines.
Sounds like you are actually. Sorry, Rose.
Yeah.
If you are into a specific fetish or kink, you should be completely free to do so, provided it is not harming other people. But I do have a problem when it gets pushed into the spotlight, especially when it's an event where people of all ages, all kinds of groups are going to be there. You're effectively putting people into your scene, and it doesn't seem very fair. They're not consenting to your fetish. And by doing these things in public, that's kind of what you're...
They're not asking people to fucking fuck them! Huh? Fuck's sake!
Yeah, they're not asking people to participate in the fetish. If people are, because there's some people who are
as I said,
way too sexual. But the thing
I've said this before. You know, where do you draw the line? Now, I'll give you an example here, right? Goths, right? Some goth fashion, right? You know, is similar to sort of stuff which people who are into BDSM wear, right? But they're not wearing it. They're not wearing it for sexual reasons. They're wearing it to be, you know, because they like wearing that sort of stuff, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
But there are people who are into BDSM who aren't into it in a sexual way, who just like the other aspects of BDSM. Like, kinks aren't inherently sexual in every aspect
what I'm saying is, where do you draw the line? Because as I've pointed out,
it's if you try to force it onto other people. That's where a line. That's an easy line. Like, you can have people with foot fetishes in a place and they can talk about it, but if they insistently ask you all the time to see your feet, like, that particular thing is bad. When you're forcing a fetish onto other people, then it's bad. But if you're just being yourself, then it's fine.
I was about to start quoting the scene from Pulp Fiction about the foot massage. Anyways.
Sorry, I was just thinking of that foot fetishist who we kicked from the guild because they kept asking Noxie for feet pics. So
yeah.
Doing. But when we're seeing the amount of companies that support Pride, the amount of people who are openly supportive of what the Pride movement is, the narrative that we are living in such a nightmare time as what Travis described really doesn't ring true. If transphobia was at an all-time high, the event would not have taken over London and trans people would not be put front and centre. Ultimately, I think that Pride can be a good...
As I say, Pride is one day. We're talking about people, you know, living out in the sticks, trying to struggle to do the day-to-day, and the fact that they've been hampered because they're getting shit for being trans. You know.
And like I said, 25%, like a quarter of trans people in the UK, of those surveyed had experienced threats of violence or violence.
Yeah.
That's far too much. And yes, people aren't going to be super violent against LGBTQ people in a pride parade, because there's hundreds of LGBTQ people and most people don't think they can take on an army.
But we need to be more understanding of exactly what we have now, that we aren't quite as oppressed as what you would have made us out to be, and we have made successes, and in fact that should be the whole celebration. It's like, look at what we've achieved. Now that's not to say that everything is perfect, especially around the world where you have countries in which homosexuality is illegal, and I've no issue with that being highlighted at all. In fact, that is a really good cause to highlight. But don't pretend that we're still living in the Stone Ages when it comes to attitudes in the UK. It's simply not true.
They're trying to bring back a Section 8 type thing in the UK. That's not Section 28. Sorry.
Well, no,
it's
not just that. I'm just thinking of all the shit Piers Morgan said about non-binary people. And she says we don't live in the Stone Ages. Have you heard Piers Morgan talk about non-binary people?
Yeah, no, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, he does it. Yeah, non-binary people, bad. I don't understand non-binary. I mean, that's Piers Morgan for you, isn't it? Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on Pride or what I've covered this week?
We don't care what your followers think.
Yeah, because it's
anyways,
rights have been fought for, and it's okay to look for the next rights to fight for until we get equal human rights.
Right. Now, if that wasn't enough, she went and she posted a further video, right? Now, lucky enough, it's only the first part of this video. But this is degeneracy in Pride.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Not.
I hate this song.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Trans Stupid, the show where I take a look at the wonderful, wacky world of LGBTQIA++ news, because stupidity is intersectional. So, the first thing I want to talk...
So, the LGBTQ community is stupid, is it?
Well, the other thing is
that what you're trying to imply? Yeah, I think it is.
But
the LGBTQ community is stupid because they're not all right-wing, twisted, self-hating cunts like you. Is that it? Yeah, I think so. That is essentially what you're trying to say here, Rose.
Yeah, I know she's trying to say that, but whenever she starts it with trans stupid, the first thought of my brain is that she's describing her show, you know, her being the trans stupid person. But that's just me.
Talk about this week are Pride events. Now, if you fall into the gay, lesbian, bi or trans category, you've no doubt attended at least one Pride event. Now, for those of you who might not 100% be aware, these are normally parades through big cities where massive amounts of people turn up, regardless of where they are really within the whole LGBT spectrum, and effectively just show that they are happy and they're proud of who they really are. And this, of course, includes all sorts of groups, including corporations, including political groups, including religious groups, and also people like this.
Now, let me explain something here. This is how the far right are trying to undermine Pride parades. Paul Joseph Watson, otherwise as I usually refer to him, Pajama Watson's also done a video similar to this, that, you know, this is, you know, basically it's okay when you're conservative, but when you're trying to challenge social norms, it's not good. Pride has always been about challenging social norms from the fucking start of it.
Well, I mean, it's also been about having a place where it's safe to be yourself, and yeah, it was fought for. Stonewall riots were a thing.
Yeah. Anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, unfortunately, sites like this aren't particularly rare. In fact, they're becoming increasingly common. In fact, for a lot of us, it's one of the most uncomfortable parts of being at a Pride event are these fetishists who turn up and effectively make the day all about them. It can...
Oh shit, what's that? Oh, that's my other alarm for waking up. Well, because normally I want to make sure I wake up before the show.
Yeah,
I do in an hour, but I added the
amount of fucking prejudice there's been against people who are into who have their kinks and fetishes. They should be able to go to Pride and be proud to be themselves. Just as you should be just as you and I and who whichever other trans woman should be able to go to Pride and be proud to be trans women.
Yeah. It can be very off-putting. It can be very awkward. In fact, one of the most awkward memories I have of being involved with London Pride was when I was marching with an employer, and this group of young people dressed out in kink gear decided that they were going to join in our part of the procession because they're celebrating their sexuality, and they were getting off of each other whilst I was effectively there with work. It was incredible.
Well, here's the thing, Rose. They're getting off on each other. Yeah, they're loving each other. The thing is, because you're so full of self-hate, you're incapable of love, aren't you? You don't like it whenever people, express their love for one another. They should be all anally retentive, twisted, right-wing, twats like you, shouldn't they?
Incredibly awkward, and I cringed a lot, but I felt bad for some of the people who turned up from work just there to kind of be an ally for the community and had to put up with that kind of, degeneracy. It is a huge problem.
She's got nothing against, she's not kink shaming, but she's describing people who are into kinks and fetish as degenerates. Well,
yep.
That's kink shaming.
That is kink shaming. It is.
For a lot of us, and a lot of it can just be down to our own sensibilities. But according to some groups, however, we're not really doing enough to be inclusive to the kink community. According to the UK Pride Organisers Network, they said on Twitter, "Is your Pride event really inclusive of everyone within the LGBTQ plus community?" Well, we recently shared a survey focusing on the inclusion of pups, furries and kinksters at Pride. Here are the Animagi survey results, and more details can be seen at Animagi's website. Now, I would always consider things like furries to be completely separate from being LGBT, and so is kink. Kink is ultimately about what you want to be doing in your bedroom, in your private time, and before I'm accused of any kind of kink shaming, I've got nothing against people who are kinky in their spare time. If they have any particular fetishes, unless you're really broadcasting it to the world, I'm not really that bothered. And
no self-awareness there.
You just described them as degenerates and say, I've got nothing against them. Basically what she says is I've got nothing against them as long as they fuck off.
Well, she's making the same argument that she used against gay people. She's saying it's fine for them to be gay. Fine for them, like the classic argument. It's fine for them to be gay as long as they just do it at their home and don't broadcast the fact that they're gay to other people by holding hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the odd one of I've got nothing against gay people just as long as they don't kiss in front of me. I mean,
yeah.
I actually have friends within London's kink scene, and I've been to Pride with them before, and none of them were expressing their fetishes in public. They were all pretty normal, so to speak. But let's have a look at this survey.
No, hold on. That's a very dangerous term to use. What is normal, Rose? Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Who are you to be to be the arbiter of what's normal?
Yeah, if you're utilizing normal as an average, Rose of Dawn is not normal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there are people who would say, "Yeah, well, I know at least one person who would say you're not normal." Lauren Witzke. Yes, yes.
That's been put out by this group called Animagi. Now, you might have heard of that name if you're a Harry Potter fan. It's because Animagi seems to come from these wizards who are able to turn themselves into animals. And, of course, Animagi also have a lot of experience dealing with various furry events. So Yeah, but let's have a look at the survey and see what they've actually said, because some of this might have some quite interesting views. So, according to the survey, larger pride events are viewed to have better kink representation than smaller ones, but overall, the representation is low. Personally, from my experience, I thought the representation was already too high, but, you know, whatever. Dress codes are not clear enough, and some believe it to be too restrictive. But it's funny because a lot of people who are fetishists and turn up to these events seem to be able to wear whatever the hell they want. And it's perfectly fine because, you know, it's pride and this is apparently what gay people are like. And some felt not all kinks are represented, and there is a lack of diversity within the groups that are present. Like, which kinks exactly are you wanting to show off in public? I mean, that in itself is quite disturbing. Which ones exactly are you talking about? Because
pause it right there. That is feeling like individuals who have kinks should feel ashamed of showing who they are in public.
The only point I would make here is, I mean, look, if someone's into rubber and chainmail and stuff, fine. I do think it might be a bit of an issue if someone is into scat. That I do.
Yeah, but I mean that there isn't a way for that to be in Pride without.
Yeah, exactly.
There's certain things that can't be in Pride without it genuinely either being realistically being unsafe.
Yeah.
Or too sexual focused, or yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, if someone wanted to sort of shit in the middle of the street and then go, "Oh, that's a great," that would be
unsanitary.
Well, it would be illegal.
Unsanitary. Yeah, it'd be illegal.
So, look, there are already laws. What I'm trying to say here is there's already laws governing that. Okay. But I don't see what the harm is if someone wants to dress up in a bondage suit. I mean, do they know? Rosa Dawn, I guess, is not old enough to know that a lot of punk fashion it was borrowed from the BDSM community, and of course Rob Halford from Judas Priest. He was getting all his outfit, his leather outfits. Where was he getting them from? Yeah, a gay BDSM shop. Yeah, so and also Susie and the Susie C from the Susie and the Banshees. Yeah, same deal. Stop being so anal.
Some are a lot more degenerate than others. On the subject of particular kink areas at Pride events, it turns out that 78% believe there should be a 18-plus kink event at a Pride, and that seems okay in that they're saying, well, there needs to be an area for people to practice this stuff, but it's only for 18+, until you realise that actually there's 22% who are saying, no, it shouldn't be 18+, that everyone should be invited to it, and that should immediately set off alarm bells.
Right. The age of consent in this country is 16. Okay. So there will be, people who are 16 who are sexually active who will be into kink and fetish.
Well,
so I do think it's a little unfair to say it's 18 plus, and that it's disturbing to say that 22% of people don't think it should be an 18 plus event. There's good reason for that.
Yeah, because there are a lot of kinks.
Plus, also, it would be worth. Look, this whole protect the children stuff is a very conservative thing. I've heard conservatives moan that Planned Parenthood places give out free condoms to underage children. Well, drum roll, children. Some people do lose their virginity before the age of 16. I would rather that there wasn't unwanted pregnancies.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
General comments on the representation included that there's an expectation of education as a significant part of kink inclusion at Pride, including education of safe practices and to make sure this is appropriate and available for all, including under 18s. There's also a strong desire to wear fetish clothing whilst being aware of the need to maintain dignity in public space and being inclusive of all. Furthermore, local kink groups want to reach out to attend or have space at Pride and signpost meaningful resources. Now, when it comes to the desire to wear fetish clothing, that's something which is very common at Pride events. You will see all sorts of outfits there. And, you know, if they are saying that they want to maintain the idea of public dignity, they should really be having a look at what it is they're wearing. There has been a long-running conversation on the inclusion of...
So, dignity is a social concept. So, the whole point of Pride is that you should feel dignified for being who you are. That is like one of the big points of Pride. And if you can't feel okay being yourself, then why then you're not really having a Pride parade. You're just doing, whatever.
Kink stuff within the LGBT community, and a lot of this kind of comes from the queer side. Now, the queer ideology, a lot of that is about tearing down social taboos, and a lot of that does...
As I've pointed out before, Pride has always been about tearing down social taboos.
Include sex. And that's the way that it always has been, even since before the real formation of queer theory. And that is effectively a very politicized viewpoint that doesn't really run with a lot of people who just so happen to be lesbian or gay. In fact, a lot of queer theorists will complain that general gays and lesbians who just...
She makes all these generalizations, yet she never has any proof to back it up. You know, a lot of lesbian and gays, you know. She's always going, you know, and you know, there's a lot of us who disagree with this opinion. Yeah. She always tries to put herself in a group, yet doesn't have any statistics to actually back it up.
Yeah.
Just want to assimilate into the problematic heteronormative society are the ones really at fault, and they should always be remembering...
You are at fault, right? Because it is the constraint of this whole, you know, cis-normative, heteronormative society, which is placed as you know, an anal restraint, a straitjacket on people to be prejudiced against those who don't fit in with that.
That at the initial Stonewall riots or the first Pride events, a lot of it was filled with people who were very, very open about what they like to do sexually. However, Pride itself has evolved a lot since then, and it's become more accepted to just be a lesbian, a gay, a bisexual, or a trans person in normal public life without there really being any kind of need to force a kind of degenerate sexuality in there. Again, I'm not saying any of this as though having a kink or having a fetish is a bad thing. I don't believe it is.
You described them as degenerates, Rose.
You are actively saying that you're saying that it's a bad thing for you to be open about a kink that you have. You should be closeted. It's really important for Rose of Dawn that people should be closeted.
Yeah.
However, when you are advertising it in public, that's when it becomes a problem. You're automatically including other people in your fetish. And the amount of videos that a lot of us will have seen at this point that seem to show off these weird fetishes, particularly the puppy play ones, that can be very creepy if you are nearby, because you will get these men walking up to you on their hands and knees and start sniffing you. They will involve you in their...
Oh, for fuck's sake, they're having a bit of fun! Lion up!
Fetish. That's not on. And even within a lot of kind of fetish spaces, that's not acceptable, because you're putting people in an awkward situation. It doesn't necessarily seem to be the idea that well, you should include these fetishists in Pride because fetishists are ultimately the LGBT community. There's a lot of people in that scene who are straight, but there's a lot of people who also understand the need to separate what you do in private versus what you do in public. And that's perfectly fine.
So,
I have absolutely...
Can you pause it? Once again, it's the argument that gay people shouldn't show that they're gay in public. They should only do that in private. It's the same sort of argument. Now, in terms of consent, yeah, they should be a bit more. Some fetishists need to be more respectful of consent in terms, because consent is kind of vital for just about everything. So, but that doesn't mean you should prevent anyone, if one person's bad.
No problems at all with people doing whatever they want in private. When you start putting other people in awkward positions, when you start painting it as though everyone within the LGBT community is part of this kind of weird subset, it becomes a mass...
No, but most LGBTQ people are accepting of people who are into kink and fetish. Right?
Also, it making people uncomfortable. Rose of Dawn, just walking around, makes certain people uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, exactly. Lauren Witzke. In fact, Rose of Dawn breathing makes Lauren Witzke, uncomfortable. I mean,
yeah, that's an argument against it.
Pretty obvious what the likes of Lauren Witzke and John Dole, ultimately they would like to do to us. They want to kill us. Okay? Let me not. Yeah, I'm not going to. Beat around the bush there.
Massive problem. It becomes a big image problem, and it's why a lot of us have problems, regardless of what we think in private. We have a problem with it being the face of who we are. Pride events are very public. This is when a lot of people really...
Oh, you know what this is? This is the respectability bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these people who go, we're not going to win rights unless we're really respectable. Unless we conform to what the cis normative heteronormative hierarchy want us to conform to.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Kind of see the gay community as it's advertised. And if the things that they're encountering isn't so much normal people, or even just people dressing flamboyantly, like I'm not talking about drag queens here. I'm not even talking about guys being top.
Some who are anti-kink, when it comes to Pride, are talking about drag queens.
Yeah.
Plus, or women being topless or anything like that. I'm talking about people specifically dressed up in an incredibly degenerate way and acting in a degenerate way in public. There is a big difference between, say, a drag queen and someone doing puppy play. That is weird. That gives us all a bad name. And I'm not comfortable with it, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with it. And there needs to be a real question as to why they can't just do their own thing, completely separate. Because those separate things already exist. They can go out and do that. That's fine. But when you're doing it in public and demanding everyone's attention, that's when it becomes disturbing. And that is when a lot of us have a problem with it. Now, the next thing that I wanted to...
Right. So that's that. That's Rose of... sorry, that's Rose of Dawn, having a diatribe about Pride. I said I'd get to comments in chat. Someone mentioned Priti Patel. So, I have a conspiracy about Priti Patel. Oh, sorry, not a conspiracy. A suspicion about Priti Patel that she has a dungeon in her house. She really does seem to be the sort of type who is a dominatrix. Seriously, I reckon she is.
I don't know enough Yeah.
Well, basically, speaking English did portray her as a dominatrix, and I thought how appropriate because I'd already reached that conclusion. The issue is J.K. Rowling probably. Yeah, Freya's saying about people, can't deal with the fact that J.K. Rowling, having been big Harry Potter fans, can't deal with the fact that J.K. Rowling is so bigoted. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, you see, I'm trying to think. I mean, when I was a kid, obviously Star Wars was the big thing. But you see, I grew out of that. Just as I grew out of other things. I mean, sure, as I say.
But I mean, shouldn't people have a problem with Star Wars and its brother-sister love kink fetish?
Yeah.
I'm not letting that go.
Incest. Incest, the game the whole family can play.
God.
That's a really old joke.
Yeah.
The right wing. Violent videos. Well, here's the thing. It makes me laugh that people like Alex Jones, who are ammo and gun sexual, believe me, Alex Jones can't get it up without fondling an assault rifle. He's always having a go at the video game industry for making violent video games. It's bullshit. But there's any correlation between violent video games and people being violent in real life. I mean, I remember Penn and Teller did a bullshit edition of bullshit on this. That's right, folks. For those who don't remember, Penn and Teller actually had a show called Bullshit, where they would discredit various things. Didn't always agree with what they had to say, but nevertheless, a lot of stuff I did agree with. The other thing I would point out about the whole thing about violent video games encouraging people to be violent is, well, we have Grand Theft Auto in this country. Do people go out and kill? No. Right? And funny enough, one of the people that pointed that out was actually Piers Morgan when he was on CNN and actually was doing something worthwhile, which was campaigning for better gun control. So, yeah, I mean, I think that America really needs to have a look at, the issue being, easy access to firearms. Anyways, we've reached the end of this show. Thank you everybody for joining us. Our social media links are in the are down below. If people want to follow us, and we're off to do another stream. Do you want to plug it?
Sure. So in about a half an hour, Rainbow Shelter News will be up on the Fluid Voice. We took a couple week break, and we're going back to do some news. And I figured, Sophia, it's fine for you to come on, especially given how much of the news is UK related, because there has been a week of like a lot. Well, how should I put it? The name of the episode is
well, if you're
homophobes, transphobes, and racists. Oh my, is the name of the episode. So,
if you're gonna have a go at the UK for being homophobic, can I just point out I'm South African. Anyways.
Well, yeah, but that's where you live right now, so UK. So
yeah,
you know more than I do about the UK.
Yeah, true. All right, well, until the next time, we'll try and possibly do a video next week. As I said, there's a couple of videos we want to respond to. And there might also be in the future a new show different to different to both the rants. To talk, it basically is a means of sort of promoting the blog I'm going to be doing, and for Ozma to kick me up the arse about what I'm not doing. So until then, take care of yourself, stay safe, and peace out.
Bye.